Mr. Bowen, good morning, sir.
The 40-year-old appeared before a judge today on charges of premeditated murder and tampering with physical evidence. An arrest report says cops performing a welfare check at the home found Nancy's body wrapped in blankets and black garbage bags in the bed of the second-floor master bedroom. And Nicole, among those shocking allegations, police allege that this man killed his wife, the vice mayor, and slept in the same home in the overnight hours. He is now under arrest and being held here at the Broward County Jail without bond.
Would anybody else from the public like to be heard?
The vice mayor was noticeably absent from Wednesday's city commission meeting, which raised alarm bells among her colleagues.
Initially, I just thought maybe there was just, issues trying to deal with work and whatnot. And so we led the meeting.
Bowen explained that he shot Nancy 3 times with a shotgun the previous night and then slept downstairs, and that Nancy was rolled up in a comforter with a garbage bag around her feet. When asked why, Stephen Bowen said that he couldn't take it anymore.
She served her community, then her husband took everything. Vice Mayor murder case. A city is grieving tonight. Not because of a natural disaster, not because of an accident, but because a woman who dedicated her life to the people she served, a woman who showed up day after day to fight for students, for seniors, for the vulnerable, never made it to her seat at the commission table. And the person responsible was the man who was supposed to love her most. Tonight, we talk about the life, the death, and the heartbreaking legacy of a vice mayor whose story deserves to be told, not just as a crime story, but as a tribute to a leader who gave everything to her community. Stay with me, because this one matters. It started like any other Wednesday. A commission meeting was scheduled, colleagues were present, agenda items were ready to be discussed, but one seat was empty, a seat that was never supposed to be empty. The vice mayor hadn't shown up. Now, for most people, missing a meeting might not raise immediate alarms. Life happens, but for a woman known for her unwavering commitment, for someone whose colleagues knew to be dependable, dedicated, and deeply passionate about her work, her absence was noticed immediately. Concern turned to action. A welfare check was made, and what investigators discovered when they arrived at her home would shatter an entire community. She was gone. Her body was found inside her own home, the place that was supposed to be her sanctuary, her safe space. She had been shot, and in what investigators would describe as a deeply disturbing attempt to conceal what had happened, her body had been wrapped in a blanket and trash bags. Let that sink in for a moment. A woman who spent her days fighting for fairness and dignity for others was denied both in her final moments. It didn't take long for investigators to focus their attention on her husband, 40-year-old Stephen Bowen. And here is where the story takes a turn that is both deeply human and deeply devastating. Stephen Bowen didn't get caught because of forensic evidence alone. He didn't get caught because investigators pieced together a complex trail of clues. He was turned in by his own family. According to investigators, Bowen confessed to his uncle. He told him that he had shot his wife, that he couldn't take it anymore. And his uncle, faced with one of the hardest calls any family member could ever make, did the right thing. He picked up the phone. He contacted the police. Think about what that moment must have felt like, sitting across from someone you've known your whole life, someone you share blood with, and hearing those words, knowing what you have to do next, knowing that making that call would change everything for your family, for him, for the community mourning outside. That uncle made the right call, and because of it, Stephen Bowen now faces charges of first-degree premeditated murder and tampering with physical evidence. Premeditated, that word carries enormous weight. It means this wasn't a moment of sudden, uncontrolled rage that came and went. Premeditated means there was thought, there was planning, there was intention. And still she went home to him because she trusted him, because he was her husband. But we will not, let this story be only about the man who took her life. Because she was so much more than a victim. She was a leader, a public servant, a woman who looked at her community and said, "I will show up for you." and she meant it every single day. Her colleagues remember her as someone who cared deeply about students, about giving young people the tools and the opportunities they needed to build a future. She understood that investing in the next generation wasn't just policy, it was a moral responsibility. She fought for seniors, for the people in her community who had given decades of their lives and deserved to be cared for in return. She saw them, she heard them, she advocated for them. She was passionate about the environment, about leaving behind a world worth living in. And she believed in social fairness, in building a community where every person, regardless of their background, had a seat at the table and a voice that mattered. These weren't just talking points, these weren't just campaign promises, this was who she was. State Representative Ashley Gantz spoke about her with a grief that was palpable, the kind of grief you feel not just for a colleague, but for a friend, a person you believed in, a person you knew was going somewhere, not just in terms of a career, but in terms of impact. Congressman Jared Moskowitz added his voice to the chorus of tributes, speaking to her character, her vision, her potential, because those who knew her didn't just see the vice mayor she was, they saw the future she was building toward. And now that future has been stolen. In the days following the discovery of her death, Coral Springs did what communities do in their most painful moments. They came together. A candlelight vigil was organized outside Coral Springs City Hall, the very building where she had worked, where she had sat in her seat at that commission table, where her voice had echoed through chambers and hallways and meetings that shaped her community. People showed up with candles and tears and memories. They showed up with heavy hearts, but with a fierce determination to honor a woman whose light should not be forgotten just because it was extinguished too soon. There is something incredibly powerful about a candlelight vigil. In the darkness, and this is a very dark moment, people choose to bring light. Small flames, yes, but together they push back against the dark, and that is exactly what this community is doing. They are refusing to let her story end with the worst moment of her life. They are choosing to remember her voice, her work, her passion, her smile, the meetings she showed up to, the people she fought for, the difference she made. That is who she was. That is what she deserves to be remembered for. And now I want to take a moment because this story asks something of all of us. Domestic violence doesn't always look the way we imagine it does. It doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come with visible bruises or obvious warning signs that the people around can easily spot. Sometimes it lives quietly behind closed doors, behind a smile at a public event, behind the ordinary rhythms of a life that looks, from the outside, completely normal. She was a public figure. She was surrounded by colleagues, by constituents, by people who cared about her, and yet. That is not said to assign blame to anyone. It is said because it is the truth, and the truth is what allows us to do better, to be more aware, to check in on the people we love, not just with a like on a social media post, but with a real conversation, a real moment of connection. If you or someone you know is in a situation that feels unsafe, please reach out to a trusted friend, to a family member, to a hotline, because the goal always is to make sure that no one else ends up as a headline. No one else ends up mourned at a candlelight vigil outside a building where they once sat in power and purpose. She gave her community everything she had. She showed up, she fought, she cared, she led. And the tragedy of what happened to her is not just that a life was lost, it's that so much more was left to give. So many more students she would have fought for, so many more seniors she would have lifted up, so many more moments at that commission table, in that chamber, in those hallways where her voice would have mattered. We will not forget her. To her colleagues who are grieving, we see you. To her community that is hurting, we stand with you. To everyone who lit a candle outside Coral Springs City Hall and refused to let the darkness win, thank you. Her legacy lives in every person she touched, in every policy she shaped, in every life she made a little bit better just by showing up. Rest in power, Vice Mayor. You deserved so much more time. Music fades out. If you found this video meaningful, please share it, not just for the views, but because her story deserves to be heard. Subscribe for more coverage that goes beyond the headlines. And leave a comment below. How do you think communities should better support public servants and protect lives behind closed doors? See you in the next one.